This is a story about a young woman named Jazz who lives in a city on the moon called Artemis, a tourist attraction and home to a small group of citizens. She lives on her own and doesn't get along with her father, a welder. Jazz works as a porter, delivering packages to local patrons, but also earns extra money on the side by sneaking in contraband items. She hopes to one day earn her certification as an EVA specialist, where she can give tours and earn a lot more money. One day, one of her patrons, a man named Tron, offers her a lot of money to sabotage the ore harvesters of the Sanchez Aluminum Company so he can ultimately buy the company and get the contract to produce the city's oxygen. Jazz accepts the offer for 1 million slugs. Jazz borrows welding equipment from her father and sneaks out of the city to the harvesters. After sabotaging one of the harvesters, Jazz is caught on camera from the other harvesters. Jazz quickly blows up 3 of the 4 harvesters and is pursued by a group of EVA specialists. Although the EVA specialists make it back to the city before she does, she sneaks in the airlock to the visitor center. However, Dale, her former best friend, catches her but lets her go if she agrees to be friends again. Jazz reports back to Tron at his home, but she finds that he's been murdered. Jazz decides to investigate Tron's murder by interviewing a man named Jin Chu, a Chinese businessman that Tron spoke to earlier at his home. Jazz sneaks into Jin's hotel room but encounters a Brazilian mobster named Alvarez. They fight, but Jazz manages to lock him out of the room and he runs away. Jazz finds a small cable, a Zafo cable, in the hotel room and then hides in a vent as she is scared for her life. Jin sends Jazz a message thanking her for dealing with Alvarez and wants to meet to discuss what to do next. Jin and Jazz meet at her father's welding shop, where Jin reveals that he profited off both Tron and the Brazilian mob, O Palacio, who owns the Sanchez aluminum factory, by selling them information about how profitable Zafo cables can be if produced in Artemis. Jin betrays Jazz and Alvarez is there to kill her. Fortunately, Jazz planned ahead and escapes in an airlock as Jin and Alvarez pass out to neon gas. Jin, Alvarez, and Jazz are arrested, but Jazz is released by the Artemis administrator, Noguchi. Jazz brings the Zafo cable to her friend, Svoboda, and they learn that the cable is an extremely efficient cable that can be used in the telecommunications industry that will be worth trillions of dollars. Jazz brings this up with Noguchi, who pulls a gun on Jazz and explains that she is aware that the old Palacio organization wants to manufacture the Zafo cable on the moon because that's the only place it can be manufactured. Jazz decides to assemble all of her contacts, including her father, to destroy the smelter in the Sanchez aluminum factory before the old Palacio organization can send up more mobsters from Earth. Dave and Jazz take a rover to the Sanchez aluminum factory, and Jazz welds an air shelter that her father built to the outside of the factory wall. She cuts a tunnel through the wall and enters the aluminum factory. After releasing chlorine in the air that sends all of the workers on the train back to the city, Jazz makes sure the smelter overheats, which will ensure that the factory is destroyed. Just as she is about to escape, Jazz notices that a woman, Loretta Sanchez, the brilliant chemist who owns Sanchez Aluminum, is walking around the factory floor. Jazz goes back to save Loretta, and after a struggle, both are safely on the rover with Dave. The smelter is destroyed, and as they approach the city, they notice that everyone has been knocked out because the smelter meltdown produced chloroform, or knockout gas, that entered Artemis's air supply. Jazz goes to the city's security office for a gizmo that can access the life support center and encounters Alvarez, who hadn't passed out because he was locked in an airlock. Jazz defeats Alvarez and makes her way to the life support center of Artemis, realizing that unless they pump fresh air from Tron's secret supply of oxygen, the people of Artemis will die. In order to access Tron's air supply, they have to open the valves outside the city. Jazz gets into a large hamster ball, while Dave opens the proper valves for the air. However, one of the valves gets stuck, and Jazz punctures her hamster ball with a sharp pipe in order to get the valve to open. The air flows, but she is knocked back and passes out. Jazz wakes up after recovering from the radiation from the sun and having spent 3 minutes in the vacuum of space. Jazz uses the money she received from Lenny, Tron's daughter, to rebuild her father's welding shop that she had destroyed. Noguchi tells Jazz that she'll be deported. However, Jazz negotiates that if she were to be deported, all types of contraband would start to get in Artemis because she controls what comes in and out of the city. Noguchi agrees that Jazz can stay, but Jazz must pay a fine that wipes out most of the money she received from Lenny. In the end, Jazz continues her business as a smuggler, but also looks to invest in the prospective company that will begin to develop and produce Zafo cables. If this video was helpful, please share it with your friends on Facebook and Twitter. Don't forget to subscribe for more Minute Book Reports, and thanks for watching.